Now, here's a story that seems to be made for me. I grew up in the it's best known for a very large hill. If you drive between Newcastle and Ladysmith, you'll see from the Newcastle side, on your right-hand side, this big hill, which is Normandien. And if you look a little closer, you'll find one of the district's biggest employers, a company that goes by the name of Normandien Farms. But it's actually Thirsty, the mineral water supplier, one of the biggest in South Africa, and very well known through its sponsorship efforts. And indeed, such is its renown that the chief executive, Rob Hodgson, is actually going to be our guest at the Biznews conference. Okay, so that's the first part of it. The second part, that Rob's at the conference, and now Gerhard Papenfus, who is a firebrand leader of NEASA, an employers organization, has said, hang on, something crazy went down at the Normandien Farms or at Newcastle. And looking into it, I just can't believe that this can happen in South Africa. But we'll find out exactly what gives in a moment. I suppose that's a little bit of a silly statement, isn't it, Gerhard? Anything can happen in South Africa nowadays, it appears. But all right, tell us take us through the events and exactly when they happen, because to me this is really horrifying when a business can be attacked in this way for social media purposes by members of parliament, South African police, members of the portfolio committee, inspectors from the Department of Labor. I mean, the whole thing just stinks.
Alec, this happened on the 4th of February. Now, there was investigations done. We didn't want to go public with this until we knew exactly what happened. We spoke to the leadership on the farm and with their lawyer. And just a bit of background. We're talking about a company that employs 3,000 employees on many sites all across South Africa, a company that comply with all legislation, including labor legislation, a clean record. They've been inspected on many occasions by Department of Labor inspectors. So that's the background. So on the 4th.
Gerhard, sorry, can I just give a bit of context there? Get a little bit of context. Newcastle has just lost the steel mill, and there were 3,500 employees involved there. So you're talking about a company that employs almost as many as the steel mill that's being closed down, which of course is shockwaves throughout the whole community and throughout the country, indeed. So that gives you an indication of the scale. Thank you.
Absolutely. So it's a big company, many sites across South Africa. And as you've mentioned, the Thirsty brand is one of the things, but they also have as a cattle farm there. So they've got various operations. On the 4th, 10 SUVs pitched up at the premises with approximately 50 people. They presented themselves to security. They overrun the pedestrian gate. When they were asked, what are you doing here and who you are, they overrun the pedestrian gate. They also forced open the vehicle gate. They did not comply to any security protocols. They simply invaded that premises. Security lost control of their premises. One of the farm directors told me that it felt like a farm invasion. Now, I saw footage of the way security was addressed, how management was addressed, the way these parliamentarians were dressed themselves, the way they talked to this business. It indicated absolute lack of self-respect, respect towards others. And then they started doing that so-called inspection. They invaded the company. There's currently, South Africa's hugely struggling with the food and mouth situation. And as I said, this is a cattle farm. They ignored the protocols for food and mouth totally. One of the portions of the farm was closed down as a result of this inspection. But the labor inspectors didn't inspect that part. They were simply informed by members of parliament that you must close that area down. So this is deeply concerning, and the point is, this is not the first time that this has happened, but this is the first time that it is actually being brought under our attention. So this is why I'm doing this, because this need to stop. These members of parliament have no business on a farm, in fact, on the premises of any business. They have no right to access whatsoever. They must be refused to gain access. Now, when they initially were refused access, the police were carrying police in civilian clothes, carrying semi-automatic assault weapons, adopted a threatening stance towards security. So they opened the gate. They were threatened with arrest, and they were walking. If you look at the footage, can you imagine police in civilian clothes with semi-automatic assault weapons walking around on your premises?
We have pictures of the police in police uniform. So I don't know if you've got guys in civilian clothes, but the important thing here is that there's a big plant. There's a big mineral water plant on this site. So are they after? Were they unhappy, the parliamentarians, about the mineral water plant and the conditions of employment there? Because clearly these are people from the Department of Employment and Labour and parliamentary committee there. Or were they unhappy about the farm and the cattle farm, which, as you say, all of the ideas of the foot and mouth disease, which is a national crisis, were ignored? So what puts them above the law there? The whole thing just confuses me. Let's get some facts.
There was no problem with anything. I think that was a political stunt. They wanted to illustrate something because there was no problem. I mean, this company is inspected regularly by labor inspectors, and they do not have a problem. The Department of Labor has a role to play, and they must do it. And any company that is conducting their business above board will say at any time, come in, you check the inspectors, you look at the work conditions, see if occupational health and safety rules are complied with. And if inspectors notice something that isn't right, because it can happen. If you are supposed to wear protective gear, an employee, and regardless of instructions, you don't wear it, and a labor inspector sees that, well, then it's pointed out to the business and says, fix it. It can happen. It can happen at any place where an inspector notices something that's not done right. A company is then told, well, just fix it. But in this case, there was no justification for that whatsoever. I mean, from what I understand, this whole contingent of this mob, if I can call it that, visited the Chinese businesses in Newcastle. And in that time, they decided, let's do a blitz inspection at Normandien Farms. Just for the show. There's nothing wrong there. I mean, this is a credible, reputable business. And if you go into their premises and you find something that in your view isn't right, well, then you just point it out. You don't pitch up. Now, they pitched up with Home Affairs, with the police, with Cusatu. And I'm not sure whether Cusatu actually was on the premises, but if I look at the one guy talking to the company management, it looked like Cusatu. What are they doing there? They have no right to be on that premises. The only person that is allowed on the premises of a business is a labor inspector, accompanied in certain circumstances, perhaps by an interpreter or an assistant. Nobody else is allowed. And a member of parliament is not allowed on the premises of a business. They have no right to be there. The fact that they are members of parliament means absolutely nothing. And so, this is abuse of power without a doubt. And we've written to speaker. We've written to the chairman of the portfolio committee on labor, and we've also brought it under the attention of various political parties to drive this issue in Parliament. But this needs to stop. And in fact, there was we've picked up that a while ago. This matter was raised at the portfolio committee, and the parliamentarian legal advisors advised them that they can't do it. The portfolio committee and its members of parliament, only has an oversight role to see that the labor inspectors do their job properly. That's their role. To dress like hooligans and conduct themselves as hooligans at the premises of a business, this is scandalous.
You talk about the parliamentarians. Well, I suppose you might imagine that there'd be a lot of emotion from Tebogo Josephine Mokwele, who's with the EFF. She was identified. She, again, I just looked into it, and it's a weird story here. She is from the Northwest Province, but she's representing the district list of the Free State for the EFF. Okay, so that's the one part that really is surprising. The second thing is she also has a very spotty track record. In 2019, she left Parliament after getting an 80,000 Rand, or being exposed to have received 80,000 Rand from the CR17 campaign. So, anyway, she was there. You can almost imagine she wasn't in her red overalls, but you can almost kind of get it that the EFF, they don't like business. They don't have a clue that their salaries are paid by the taxes that business and their employees pay. But what really, really surprised me was one Juliet Adeline Basson of the Patriotic Alliance. Now, the Patriotic Alliance is led by Gayton McKenzie. Gayton McKenzie is a champion of business. He is a champion of employment in South Africa. His whole party, the PA, is here to say, we want to grow the economy. My goodness. And he's got a member of parliament who he appointed as recently as June 2025 from Ermelo. She stood in a by-election in Ermelo and was defeated in October 2024, drafted in when another member of parliament left. So clearly she's got some standing in the parliament, in the PA. She came from Cape Town, at whose expense, I guess, taxpayers would know. Went to Newcastle and then rocked up at a legitimate business, intimidated this business, doing exactly anti to what the Patriotic Alliance stands for. So that really, really confuses me. And I wonder what would have motivated her, or how this whole thing actually happened. You've looked into it. You've written a statement. You do, of course, represent business, so you would be fighting on the side of business. But do you have any idea why these guys decided to have a go, apart from the fact that it's one of the biggest employers in the region and maybe they could get a few social media likes?
Maybe it was just an outing, emotionally heightened outing. And, when you're on that premises, the fact is they didn't illustrate any respect for these people and what they do towards the employees, for the employees, towards the employees. And if you multiply the number of people sustained by that, if you multiply 10 by 30,000 people and more, and the business community in Newcastle live off this business, and then you stand there and shout upon a security officer, if you look at that and you think by yourself, you're a business owner and somebody from Parliament come and treat you in this manner. The fact is, and you alluded to that, Alec, they have no idea, and I don't think they think about it. Where does the money come from? There's a couple of businesses in South Africa, and let's say 200,000-300,000 businesses in South Africa and individuals are carrying this country. The whole enterprise is carried by a small number of people, and then these guys treat them as if they hate them. They have no idea, and I believe if you ask them where does the money come from, they won't be able to tell you. Because if they do understand that, they will have to realize that they will have to treat these people with respect. We must, this is the thing that scares investors. The main thing is business confidence. You can make a list of all the things that undermine business confidence. But all of that culminates into an environment where businesses, I don't know whether I'm welcome in that country and do I want to invest there. Now, if Parliament sits there and they decide, let's go and investigate a lot of businesses and just let's pop in on this farm and see and make news. And then they put it on their website to illustrate what they do for employees. They do nothing for employees, nothing. Our unemployment rate in South Africa and our 60% youth unemployment rate is as a result of what these members in Parliament are actually doing for business in South Africa. And they say, we're doing it for employees. No, you don't. Employees are losing their jobs. There are a huge amount of poverty in this country. This is because of what you do. If you free businesses' hands, if you treat them, if you make them feel welcome in this country, we will invest. But you need to illustrate to business what are you going to do to make us welcome, and not say it. It's not good enough for the president to say certain things. You must illustrate it in terms of your action, legislation, and the behavior of members of parliament, amongst others. This is the lack of confidence that's causing the unemployment in South Africa. That alone is causing it. And it's these guys, the same guys that sat on that, entered that premises. They're making the legislation in South Africa. And it's scary to think these guys are ruling over us, well, at least in their minds. They rule over us.
They are being well paid as well. Parliamentarians get about 100,000 Rand a month now of our tax money for starters. But I'm trying to find out what they were doing in Newcastle in the first place, because that seems to just illustrate or emphasize the problems here. You said a moment or a little while ago that they were looking at Chinese companies. So are they trying to close down the companies that are run by entrepreneurs from South Africa's favorite partner? And if that's the case, where are these guys coming from? What's motivating?
Well, they're looking at illegal immigrants being employed. That's what they're looking at. But it changes the subject somewhat. But Alec, if you look historically, we have a huge problem with illegal immigrants. But the point is, they are in South Africa now. The borders were opened at one stage. They are here, and they are employed, and they are employed. That is a fact. That is a fact. And I tell you one thing: there are employers that prefer some of the illegal immigrants because of the attitudes they illustrate in the workplace. There's a huge amount of entitlement among certain South African workers. So, I'm not justifying the illegal immigrants working there. I'm saying that's what they were going to look for, were looking for. And that's why the police, amongst others, in civilian clothes, were doing, armed in civilian clothes, were doing. I think that's what they did at these Chinese businesses or other businesses employing so-called illegal Chinese citizens and other people. But just on the issue of, can you imagine what is armed police doing in civilian clothes? Now, this is, and you quite often see that, armed policemen in civilian clothes. I mean, it can be a robber, it can be anything, and they're working with an assault weapon, semi-automatic assault weapon on a premises. This is gangsterism.
Okay, we get that, and in KZN we know a lot of that exists within the police force. We've got the Madlanga Commission, we've got the parliamentary investigation. But here, if from what I understand now, this group of 50 people with 10 SUVs arrived presumably at Chinese businesses first, rode them over, rode roughshod, and then said, "Hang on, who's the biggest employer in this town, in this district?" And here they are, Normandien Farms. bigger now than ArcelorMittal, which was the biggest because they've now closed down the steel mill. So let's go and show them who's boss, kind of thing. So it got a lot of emotion, and presumably they went there to go and find illegal immigrants. Did they find anyone? Was there any justification thereafter?
No illegal immigrants found. So, at least you need, you can, if you want to do an inspection and you want to give the police access to your premises, there need to be some prima facie justification for this conduct. You can't just overrun a business and pitch up, bring all of them in, and then find nothing. And verbally abuse amongst others. One of these parliamentarians called one of the employees "your white," and the word starts with a C, and then added, "We're coming for you," in the office.
These are not people from the district, though, because you know that isiZulu, there's no way you're going to be having illegal immigrants in a big employer, which is in KZN. It just doesn't work like that. And someone from Ermelo and someone from the Northwest Province comes in there. They don't have a knowledge of local conditions. It clearly, from what you've told me now, and then they go in and start insulting. Start swearing at people because they're white. That doesn't work in my older hometown. But anyway, what are you going to do about that? What can NEASA do for Normandien Farms, Thirsty, for the people who've been abused in this way to ensure it doesn't happen again?
Well, as I said, we wrote to Speaker of Parliament and to the chairman of the Portfolio Committee. They need to deal with this, and let's see how they're going to deal with this. And the second thing is, give this as much as possible airtime. They need to be sensitized of this, and business need to be sensitized. And this is you helping in this regard, Alec, by a business need to understand when these guys arrive, what you need to do. But then one need to understand, what do you do if guys with semi-automatic assault weapons pitch up at your security and you threaten them with arrest? That's a tough position you find yourself in at that moment. Now, people said, well, then you open the gate. I said, no, you don't. And if that leads to arrest, well, then a business owner must do it. There's a point where you say, well, then arrest me, and then deal with that afterwards. You have a right. Nobody except a labor inspector is entitled to enter your premises. Now, if the Department of Home Affairs arrive and they say that's what they do, I believe the same arrangement applies. But that is structured, is disciplined, and then a certain number of people comes onto your premises and do an inspection. You can't stop that from happening, and I won't advise anybody to do that, because they have a right to do that, but not this mob pitching up at your premises. You keep your premises closed. They have no right to be on your premises, and these parliamentarians need to understand it. Their job is to go and do it there within the confines of that building in Cape Town, but not on the premises of business, and they need to be kept out. So let's see. We've started it now. Let's see what's going to happen. But the public awareness campaign in respect of this is very important.
Gerhard Papenfus is the Chief Executive of NEASA. I'm Alec Hogg from Biznews.com.